Welcome to the Jacksonville Momcast, a podcast dedicated to telling the real stories of local Jacksonville moms. Sponsored by Jacksonville Beach Moms, each month we'll cover topics to help you navigate mom life on the First Coast. Thanks for joining us as we tackle all things motherhood and more with a focus on the 904. Welcome to episode 22 of Jacksonville Momcast. Our guest today is Claire Herrera. Claire is a pediatric sleep consultant with Blissfully Rested. And so, Claire, go ahead and start by telling us a little bit about you and your family.
Hey, so first of all, thanks so much for having me. So I'm Claire. I am married, mother of two kiddos. I have a boy who's 6.5, and I have a little girl who is 20 months, a toddler running around. So I was born and raised here in Northeast Florida, primarily the St. Augustine area. My husband is from up north originally, but he is totally converted to Florida lifestyle and loves this area. Yeah, I joke that I'm one of the only locals that is left around here because there's so many transplants, people from other areas, that I am one of the few, I guess. And my parents as well are from this area too. So you don't run into that too much anymore. I worked 8+ years in retail banking, believe it or not. Some people don't know that. 10+ in customer service. And so that's a little bit about my background.
That's so funny that you mentioned that you're native to the area, because our guest on the first episode for season 3, she is also a Jacksonville native. And we were talking about how in Jacksonville, it's like you've either were born and raised here and you're native, my husband is, or you've been here like 5 years, which is, yes. It's like I feel like there's not a lot of in between. So that's funny. So tell us a little bit about Blissfully Rested and what you do and your role as a pediatric sleep consultant.
Yeah. So put simply, I teach tired parents how to get their babies and toddlers sleeping and practicing healthy sleep habits, so the whole family can feel rested and thriving again. So it's kind of funny because I stumbled upon this career, truthfully. I struggled with my firstborn and their sleep. So when you talk to a lot of people, or most women that are doing this as a career, it's something probably close to them, like it was their child, or usually it's firsthand where they had some trouble. So I had the trouble with my firstborn, but once I had my daughter, we saw some of these kind of habits coming up with her. So it was really like 4 or 5 years later, we decided to buckle down with her and kind of commit to a plan, sleep training. I came across Sleep Sense. Some people maybe have heard of that. It's a method. So then I found that, I came upon it. I also found that that you could be trained to do this yourselves and actually own your own business, be an entrepreneur, be trained and certified to do this. So it's really something that spoke to me. So I kind of went all in on it. And I've kind of been having fun along the way. So that's kind of the short and long of it, of how I got into it.
And that's a great story. I think there's probably not a mom out there who has not struggled with sleep at some point, even if you have a newborn that's a good sleeper, and then, you go through cycles, obviously, as they grow and teething and etc. So I love that you took your challenges and turned them into a new adventure, a new career. So thinking about sleep and the importance of sleep, why is it necessary for kids to be well rested?
Yeah. So then I guess this would be something I am thinking of adding. So basically also in coming into this new venture or career, I wanted to get out of the typical 9 to 5 that's what I had, was a full-time, I guess you could kind of say like a corporate job. So I wanted to be home with the kids more, something that would allow me to do that. So never would I have thought this would have been the path I took, but because it was close to me, I experienced it firsthand. It was like, why not? So that's when I went all in. So for years, I feel like our society has kind of downplayed like the importance of sleep, and especially women, or really all of us, right? We kind of push through, and sometimes it's kind of posed as like a luxury to us, where if we're to take a break and sleep, like, oh, that's great for you that you can do that. But really, I think we have to go back to like, no, it's an important human need that we all have, right up there with eating well, exercising, like it affects everything we do. And then I don't think anybody has not had this, but if you've been chronically sleep deprived, I mean, I think that it affects your mood, Mentally, we're more easily to snap at our partner. There's so many things that it does affect. On a deeper level too, it is such things as the postpartum depression in general, weight gain, lowered immune system, our physical health, anxiety, which, these last couple of years, that'd be one more thing to add on top of it. Well, another thing I was going to say was our immune system that it can lower is too. So that's kind of on the adult side, but those things kind of trickle into kids as well, how it's all the same thing for children. So sleep, obviously, I see as a very important thing that we all need.
And it does touch pretty much every aspect of your life in terms of your health, your cognitive functioning, your physical well-being, like you said. So what are some things you see in kids at various ages when they're not well rested? I know as an adult, like you said, sometimes you snap at your partner or you're irritable. What are some characteristics you see in kids that are that chronic sleep deprived state?
Yeah, so I think this being sleep deprived probably gets blamed for a lot of other things, a lot of other conditions, even simply like being able to concentrate in school, if we're talking about like school age children. I'm not downplaying that like ADHD is a legitimate thing that children have, but I think, again, it's kind of going back to basics. Like, are they getting the amount of sleep they need? Is it quality sleep? And a lot of these things will kind of fall into place, or at least ease off. Not that it does away with certain conditions, but it will ease off and they thrive so much better. If it's like babies, we kind of Google like, what is colic? Like, we don't even know what colic is, right? But usually it's just excessive fussiness in babies. And a lot of times we're trying to fix it with, food and this and that, but maybe that baby just really needs to sleep and catch up on sleep. So that's kind of on the infant side of things, all the way to children in school years, how it affects and touches, everything they do. Toddlers, the acting out and the tantrums. I have a little toddler right now. A lot of those things we're not going to get around, but it just kind of heightens it when they don't have that sleep too.
And so let's talk about newborns. You mentioned a little bit the newborn stage. So many moms, you're exhausted leaving the hospital. You bring home your precious little bundle of joy. Obviously, starting off in the beginning, you're not going to be on a sleep schedule. It's kind of like mass chaos for the beginning. But what are some things you can do right away to kind of start putting in some good habits for sleeping with newborns, and also really to avoid those bad habits that you don't want to, have a 2 or 3 year old and be, like, oh my gosh, I should have started this sooner, or I should have never done this. So talk to us a little bit about that newborn stage and what we can do to kind of start off on a good foot.
Okay, so you may have heard it now or it's very common that it's called the 4th trimester, that we're calling this for newborns. And so everything we're doing is kind of taking that into account. We're working very slowly with these. We're not putting a lot of expectations, obviously, on newborns. I think sometimes that's where there's a disconnect. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to sleep train a newborn, or we're going to be strict, where it's like, no, like we're not expecting that of that stage. A lot of it too is just taking care of the mom postpartum. Sometimes that shifts where it's all about the baby, but it's like, okay, she needs, help right now too. So making sure she has a good support system, she is getting sleep, just being realistic with the expectations of newborn sleep too. So promoting, full feeds, that the baby is feeding well. It's also never too early really to start routines. Again, we're not going strict, but little things that are going to signal to them down the road, like, oh, this is what sleep means, or this is when, nap time is, days from nights, that sort of thing. So we're working on little goals. We'll probably talk about this in a little bit, but like when I work with newborns, it's a longer amount of time too, because it's kind of a goal each week of what to work toward. And it's, little things, like you said, that are just building on, that'll help you down the road for when they're older.
And so you mentioned routines, and as kids get older and the routines change, what are some things to remember to help you stay on track? I know, like, once you start adding in like activities, or a lot of times, my son had a very, very, I don't want to say strict, but bedtime was sacred for us. And so we always had our routine. And then, the next one comes along and you're like, well, that's adorable, but we have soccer practice. So get in the car, even though it's 7:00 and you should be going to bed. So what are some things as kids age, or even thinking about that second child, that you can implement to kind of keep you on track with those good habits?
Yeah, so sometimes I hear that when a problem comes up, the parent's response will be, kind of to your point, well, I've been doing the same things, I've been doing all along or for months or for years. Why is there a problem now? But that's probably kind of answering your own question in a way that, obviously kids are changing all the time and developing, and the sleep needs change with them. So we can't just necessarily say, here's your bedtime forever, or here's how many naps you're going to have forever. So that changes, whether it's dropping a nap or really, I think up until even like 10 years old, the sleep needs are pretty high, like at least 10 hours for a child. So, that's going to kind of stay. But yeah, I think we have to kind of look at those cues and, yeah, kind of adjust where we need to, that we can't just keep it the same and expect, I guess, the same results. Yeah. So the ever changing needs of the child is something to take into consideration. A lot of times it probably didn't pop out of nowhere. It was probably going on, and then we just kind of noticed it. Like you said, with with another child that came along the way, it kind of brought it to our face, probably like, oh, I need to make some adjustments here.
Absolutely. And I will definitely say, as I have teenagers, my son started high school this year, and the start time for high school is, in my opinion, criminal. And so he's up extremely early. And even as the mom now of a teenager, I am having to kind of guide him towards earlier bedtimes, because I know he's not getting the sleep he needs. And I know he needs to be not just awake at 7 a.m., but he gets dropped off and he needs to be functioning and be able to answer questions in a class that starts at 7:15 in the morning. So I think that's a good suggestions you have to, kind of adjust as you go. And it's not just through the toddler years, unfortunately. I guess until you send them off to college, you're having to kind of keep an eye on their sleep schedule.
Yeah, I am yet to see that. Some reason I thought teenagers went at a later time. So that's interesting. I thought they went later and got out later, because I was explaining that to my 6-year-old, how they get to go at a later time.
Well, it's interesting, and it depends on the county. We're in Duval County. I think St. John's is flipped. So my daughter's in middle school. So she starts at 9:15 and he starts at 7:15. So we joke that like he's eating lunch when she gets to school, because it's so off. But to make that jump from middle school, she sleeps till 8 a.m. So she goes to bed at a decent hour, but I'm not as strict with her, because we can be a little more loosey-goosey, because even if she's in bed a little later, she can sleep in. Whereas he doesn't have that luxury. So it's been an interesting transition when you have a child who's, they're at an age where they want to be more independent, but it's important to teach them that's fine, but you need to start making some decisions so that you can be successful and not be exhausted all day.
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about bad sleep habits. And first of all, what are some problematic sleep habits that you see that parents come to you with that they are concerned with?
So my approach is, there is no like bad sleep habits or sleep props necessarily, but I always say, the moms that I talk to, is what is sustainable for you and what's not anymore. So, reasonably, maybe you can get away with getting up once a night to feed your baby or even your toddler, but can you handle 2, 3, 4, how many times a night can you get away with that? So those are kind of the things that I think they would have, ask yourselves as far as bad sleep habits necessarily. And then, dive into seeing a little bit more if there needs to be a change. So that's kind of asking yourself, does there need to be a change? Is everybody thriving in the household? So if not, how can I shift and see about finding a method that aligns with me, and then getting some guidance to help me along the way. So I know that's kind of general, but more seeing like, what can I personally deal with and what can't I? And if this just isn't working anymore, it's okay to reach out and get help. Because we can maybe start some, we could say bad habits from a young age, but those can always be, corrected later down the road. And we can, what worked for you at 3 months is not going to work for you at 6 months necessarily. So again, that's kind of that shift of, it's okay right now, but let's keep this in mind a few months down the road, or let's revisit this. So.
And I think that's a good perspective, that it's so dependent on what you as a parent, what your threshold is as far as what you're comfortable with, and also what you can take in terms of being up in the night, laying down with your child to help them go to sleep. And like we mentioned with the first kid versus subsequent, that might be okay for your first kid, but then, you're 8 months pregnant, you're tired, and you're already feeling uncomfortable, anticipating a second child. And then you kind of need to maybe make some adjustments to make your child more independent in the sleep area so that you can deal with a newborn.
Yeah, I think you probably kind of learn in time because that's exactly like it wasn't until I had my second where I said, okay, you live, you learn from the first, didn't really have any plan in mind, but also was not entirely happy with how things were going either. So, and feeling lost. So it wasn't until it was the second where it was like, okay, let's shift things. Let's get, because I could see too, like he needs to sleep. This new one's going to need her sleep. I do. So, yeah, it's a different dynamic for sure when you bring a second child, third child, however many later. And yeah, you kind of live and learn, right? And that's like a just personal experience, I think, where you get that.
Absolutely. So let's talk about naps. How do naps factor in with a good sleep routine? And along with that, do you see where a child could be a maybe, I hate to say bad napper, but maybe not take long naps and then do fine in the evening? And then also vice versa. Do you see kids who are great nappers and take a great nap during the day and then struggle in the evening? So talk to us a little bit about naps.
Yeah, so naps and nighttime sleep in a way are very tied together. We've probably all heard that misconception that if I keep my child up during the day or if they skip a nap, oh, they'll sleep great for me that night or they'll fall asleep that much easier. Sometimes, yeah, there might be a few stories where that happens. Probably the child is exhausted, so they do fall asleep, but then their sleep is fragmented, meaning that they are getting up several times or like let's face it, they're probably still going to get up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. It did not make them sleep longer. We've all probably experienced that firsthand. But I have, and especially recently, dealt with some children on the younger age, believe it or not, that will sleep very well all through the night without having major night wakings. But then they do kind of struggle with the naps, having the super short 30, 45 minutes. So we work through that, but their bedtime sleep or nighttime sleep, I should say, is better. And kind of a couple of reasons for this too. I mean, nighttime sleep is a deeper, more restorative type of sleep. If we just kind of think of, I mean, we have nighttime on our side, it's darker, it's probably going to be a more quiet time of night than all the activity that's going on during the day. We have the melatonin on our side too that kicks in where that's kind of help us be in that sleep and stay in that sleep. So yeah, even working one-on-one, sometimes naps is that last part that kind of falls into place. The child may be sleeping fine throughout the night, and the naps are still something that we kind of tweak in that last week together or last few days. So, like I said, I think it's important that the two work together. We may have heard sleep begets sleep. So we want them to have good sleep through the day so they can have good sleep at night, but it can be disconnected sometimes.
And so let's kind of switch gears and talk about what you do specifically as a pediatric sleep consultant. So start by telling us, what ages do you typically work with, and how does a session with you work?
Would be like the age of newborn to about 6 years old. And when I say newborn, ideally more like the 8 week range. So not that I can't work at all before that age, but I would be more talking to the mom, giving some education, maybe kind of setting her up for things to look for when we would more start communicating one-on-one at 8 weeks. And for the newborn stage, just depending on what age I'm working on too, is how long our time together would be. So newborns is looking more at like 4 weeks, because like we touched on earlier, we're taking it slower. We're working on different sleep goals. So that's longer. But typically the time I work one-on-one with you is 2 weeks. And it's a full support. We meet together. We have a consultation that lasts at least an hour. We're going to go through the sleep plan that I make according to your child, customized one-on-one. So basically you leave that call feeling, totally confident going into night one. You know what's expected, what you're going to do. And I don't just leave you with a plan and be like, see you in 14 days. But obviously, when you work with a coach, you want the support. So yeah, I get on Zoom calls with you, regular phone calls. We have like messaging, texting. So it really is hands-on. So you reach that goal at the end of your 14 days or 3 weeks. However, if it's a child that's already transitioned out of their bed, I say it could be a little longer, like 3 weeks. That's why I say average of 2 weeks together.
And thinking about the last couple of years with COVID, have you noticed that people are more eager to kind of make sure their kids are well rested? Like, have you noticed at all any kind of changes in parent attitudes over the last couple of years?
I think everyone is kind of all over the place. I think a lot of people you'll hear surviving instead of thriving, right? So I think, yeah, whether it's children or themselves, I think people are becoming more aware of probably health and wellness in general. and looking for avenues to improve. So yeah, I would say that falls under helping their children as well, helping them. So when you help your children, you're helping yourself, right, as well, or vice versa. So I think people are becoming more, yeah, how can I help, being more on the holistic side of thinking of things. So definitely.
And so let's talk about sleep controversies when it comes to sleep training. And there's a lot of schools of thought out there, and there's a lot of misinformation, I feel. Yes. So talk to us a little bit about what parents may have heard about what sleep training is versus what it actually is versus, what you can kind of expect when you work with a sleep trainer, things like that.
Yeah. So when I don't think and I kind of laugh about this, but serious at the same time, I don't think the subject of sleep training can be talked about without there being some kind of controversy or pushback. And I totally get it, because a little bit of a backstory. So when I implemented these sleep skills with my daughter, I remember shortly after I did it, like I didn't even call it sleep training. I didn't want the word around it, like associated with that's what I did. So then it's kind of funny because it's like, okay, I was, I myself had a stigma around it that I was holding on to that I didn't like. So that's where I think like it's important that we have education around like what it is, the importance of sleep, most importantly, the outcome of what you're going to get from the, once you're through working together. So I think just kind of educating like, how important it is, but also to answer that question a little bit more clearly, I think the guard kind of goes up because a lot of times when we hear sleep training, usually our mind goes to a certain kind of method, and you'll probably agree that it's the cry it out. So it's the typical, I'm going to leave my baby in the room, I'm going to close the door, and you may not check on them for hours or until the next morning is a certain kind of method out there. But again, I think it's important to know that there is more than one method out there. And if you're getting hung up on maybe the word, like I was, training or sleep training, or this thought that you have, use sleep support, use something else, but just know that it's important and it's healthy for you. And it doesn't have to be the old fashioned way of thinking of it. I like to say that, of course, there's probably going to be some protests, some crying, and that's just because, we're doing things differently. We're changing methods of how that baby knew how to sleep and get to sleep for months, maybe even years. So of course, there's going to be some pushback, but that's where, you can be hands-on and still give support when you get through that time too.
And I think when I think sleep training, after kind of like talking to you and some other people in the industry, I think of it more as training the parents how to deal with their children, how to get their kids the best sleep. Right. So you're not necessarily training a baby, but you're training a mom on how to do the best they can to get their child a well-rested night. So
yeah, I think that's very good because like I started out saying, I teach tired parents. So it's like guiding the parents to guide the child, I guess, in a way too. So a lot of it is like, how are we looking at it? And maybe we need a shift in our mind. I mean, I needed that shift too. And that's how I felt so strongly about, let's think about this differently. Look at the results. It's a good thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. So do you have parents that are ever reluctant to follow your plan? And then how do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, I like this question. And, I like to kind of go backwards a little bit. So usually like the very first point of contact or the first call that we have together, I almost call it like an interviewing process. So like I'm finding out as much about them as they are about me, and we're asking questions. So, if everybody's being open and honest, I think that's when you'll kind of tell, are we a right fit to work together? Or, am I going to like her coaching style? Are they going to want to listen to the things that I'm going to be guiding them in? So I think you can find out a lot probably from that call. And then backing up a little bit, when I work one-on-one with somebody, I mentioned that we have that at least hour Zoom call together where I'm laying out the plan. So hopefully they walk away from that call that there's no questions about, okay, this is what she, told me we need to do, or yeah, so it is very, very clear going forward. Of course, there's going to be hiccups that probably come up along the way and questions they're going to ask. So at the end of the day, I mean, I'm guiding that person and coaching them, but the parent's the parent, they're the parent to the child. So if there's something they don't want to do or whatever, I mean, I guess you could say it's ultimately in their hands, but I think if we know who you're working with and you're a good match, I think you can kind of avoid some of those things that could come up.
And do you find it's so rewarding at the end when you have a child who's now sleeping well and well rested, and you see, possibly improved attitude or behavior or mood, all those things we talked about in the beginning? Like, are the parents grateful? Are they like, oh my goodness, I didn't know it could be like this?
Yeah, I could think how could they not be? I kind of feel like I'm reliving it with them each time, I do it too. So it's like you get the skeptical, I think everybody kind of in the beginning, like, okay, well, you're saying this, but let's see. And then a couple days into it, they're like, well, I can't believe like we just made these little bit of changes. Why didn't I do this all along? Or, things like that. So I feel like, yeah, I'm reliving the excitement with them. And it is really neat to see those changes and improvements.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit, what's your favorite thing about being a mom in Jacksonville?
I love that it's kind of a coastal town, so it is close to the beach. I don't get there probably nearly as much as I should, but just the other week, kind of feeling stressed, feeling taxed. I put both the kids in the car at like 5 p.m. and we drove down to one of the local beaches, and we just kind of sat on the beach and I let them do their thing. So it's kind of nice, even if you don't live like right on the coast, 30, 40 minutes tops, you can be by the beach, and it's a really, really cool thing. So that I probably like best. Like if my husband ever talks about moving, to another state or somewhere away from the coast, it's like, yeah, but it's nice to know it's kind of in your backyard. So I like that part of it. And your whole life kind of, that's your reference of, oh no, you got a beach to get to. If you want to, it's close by.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we take advantage of it because it is like just part of your life. Like it's just right there. So before we close up for today, tell us a little bit how people can get a hold of you, and if they're interested in your services, what exactly you offer and how it works.
So to everyone, I do offer free evaluation calls. They're short, usually about 15 minutes, where we can get to know each other a little bit better. I can get to know a little bit more about your situation. I can give you tips in the meantime, and then ultimately see what working together would look like. But as far as contacting me, I am at Blissfully Rested on Instagram, which you probably will highlight. My website is blissfullyrested.com. But yeah, I think that is all I had for today.
Well, thank you so much, Claire from Blissfully Rested. And we'll put a link to her site and her social media in our show notes. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode of Jacksonville Momcast, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow us at Jacksonville Momcast on all the social medias for show updates and more information about our guests. To learn more about what you heard today, visit our show notes at jacksonvillemomcast.com. Thanks for listening.